Begin the current Daf Mesech Yevamos Daf Yomi. Begin on the bottom of Kuf Zayin or Beis, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Yomim. We continue with the halacha, the next Mishnah, continuing on the theme of the previous Mishnah is regarding this, that the title of the parak Isha Shalom was discussing regarding Shalom Ba'olam, Shalom Beino Lebena, regarding we believe the woman when she says her husband died. Actually qualifies the halacha, the extent of how much we believe her, and regarding what. Today's daf. Some of the discussed in today's daf are machlekes. If a woman who says meis bali, which she's believed to get remarried, does that also mean she gets her kesuba or not? Then the next Mishnah continues regarding the chamesh nashim who are disqualified to testify meis bali. Although anyone's believed to say that her husband died, including a woman, but there are 5 women who are not believed, and instances of opposing eidim regarding meis bali. Then we continue on the Amid Beis regarding a discussion, what happens if you have contradictory testimony, how does it play it out? 1 against 1, 2 against 1, 1 against 2, 2 against 1, and so on. So begin the current daf, Kuf Zayin Beis, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Amid, begin the next Mishnah. It says the Mishnah, we have a machlekes. They say, okay, so we set up until now that Tinase, a woman, could go ahead and get married based on her own word that her husband died. And moreover, he says, V'tila Ksubasa. Now, based on what she said, that her husband's dead, and it's acceptable for her to get married, so it's acceptable for her to get her ksuba. We said let me say no. Tina say yes, she's allowed to get married. And we said, that was in the previous Mishnah, that we said in the previous Daf, that because of the woman that became bom and akatzer, and we said, okay, we have to believe the woman when she says her husband dies. But she cannot collect her ksuba, her dowry. Bishami said to them, I don't understand you, Beisil. What do you mean? He tarted him, you're permitting the severe isur deraisa of karas, of arayas, of eshes ish. Not the moment hakal. You're not going to permit the lighter halacha of monetary compensation of a ksuba. For sure, it's a kavachayim. If you believe her that she can get married, for sure she should believe to get her ksuba. So Amar Beisil said to them, no. Metzina we find as the Gemara continues up Kufid Zayin and Aleph, she'ina achan echnasa lo nachlo al piyah. The brothers are not going to be able to inherit their brother based on her words, because the Torah says regarding monetary law, Pishnaim Eidim Yakum Davar. You need the testimony of 2 witnesses. Regarding her own marriage, the rabbis were lenient because of the Iguna, because we don't want the woman to be bound to her husband that's really dead. So that's where they made the leniency. But you see, regarding monetary law, it's not like the brothers can't just go ahead and inherit his part of the Yerusha because of what she's saying. But Amar Beishami says, okay, fine. So maybe you don't like my Kabul Chema. But Valim say for Ksuba no one. But from the text of the Ksuba itself, you could learn that I'm right. Why? Because he writes the whole like this. If you're going to go ahead and get married to someone else, and here she's getting married to someone else, what does the Ksuba say? Titli Masha Kosav Lechi. Take what is written for you. And therefore, if the Ksuba is saying when you get married to someone else, you're going to take what I'm giving you, well, she got married to someone else. So the Ksuba itself is requiring and mandating that she gets compensated for the Ksuba. And the Mishnah says, and Beisil retracted and ruled like Bishama. So although the wording actually sounds like that it's from because of the Kriyas Ksuba, but Taisa says maybe not because of a contradiction, actually could be because of the Kabul Chaymer. But be that as it may, first Beishami came with a Kabul Chaymer, Beisil says not a Kabul Chaymer, and then Beishami comes from the reading of the Ksuba, that if you look at the words itself indicate that she's going to get a Ksuba if she's going to marry someone else, and ultimately Beisil retracted. The Gemara tells Omer of Chizda, Nisyabma, if she does Yibum to the Yavam, let's say she's believed to say her husband died and the husband didn't have any children, she was doing Yibum, so that much is that Yevam nichnas l'nachal al piyah. The Yavam will go ahead and take over the inheritance of his brother based on what she's saying. Because as the Gemara told us, whoever marries the Yavam merits in the assets of the brothers. Why? Because says Rav Chizda, Haim Darshu Medrash Ksuba, Beishamai, they had expounded the words of the Ksuba to show that the woman's going to get a Ksuba. So on the Midrash Torah, you think we're not going to darshan the words of the Torah? Meaning, what does it say in Devarim? It says, Yakum Hashem Achav B'Merachman. Torah says that the Yavam is going to go ahead and take over the name of his brother, but they come, and he did take over. Meaning, even if you get the same Mishum Miguna, I'm saying ultimately, like we're saying, that the halacha is that she's allowed to do Yibum. And if she's doing Yibum, then it was Yachim Hashem Macham, and he's the one that gets the Yerusha, whoever's Yachim Hashem Macham, and therefore he's going to get the Yerusha. Now, the Gemara qualifies, Amar Rav Nachman says, meaning we're in this halacha, the Mishnah, if she gets a ksuba or not. So what's with the following case? In Basla Bezin, she comes to court, Vamar she says, Meiz Bali, my husband died, Hitiruni lihi nasi, permit me to get married. So then says Rav Nachman clearly, so we permit her to get married, like we said, obviously in the previous Mishnahs. And also a nice like ksubasa, which even Basil ultimately retracted, we give her the ksuba. Fine. But now he's mixed it up a little bit. He says, let's say she says, Tunuli ksubasi, give me my ksuba. And then that's all she says. So the halach is afli nase matir nase. Then we don't even permit her to get remarried. Right, then what's the reason? He says, I think the ksuba asai. She's coming really because she wants the money. And for that you need testimony, you need witnesses. So we don't believe you for that, and we're not going to let you even get remarried. But he brought the following question. Let's say she says, Hitiruni lihinasi, but tunuli ksubasi. So she says both. She says, permit me to get married and give me my ksuba. Ma, what's Allah? So the Gemara explains the question. So once she mentioned her ksuba, okay, I died to the ksuba, so then obviously she's coming because she wants to collect the ksuba, and therefore we're not going to allow. Maybe no. You don't know. You never know what's going to be the winning claim. So whatever she thinks she'll bring to the court with all the documents, with all the files and everything, she's saying, but really her primary intent is to get remarried, and that we permit her. Now, once we've been to get remarried, she takes the ksuba, because from the Sibuk ksuba we learn out that if you get remarried, you get the ksuba. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara first doubles down and says, okay, but even if you're going to say whatever a person has, they're going to say to the court. In other words, she's not really coming for the ksuba. She's just like, I don't know what to say, but I want to try to get, remarried. So she's going to say, let me get married and give me my ksuba, whichever claim, I don't know what the rabbis need, whatever claim, just let me get remarried. So then you're going to say, okay, maybe then we'll let it happen. But what happens if she has the opposite order? Let's say she says, Tnulik ksubasi, vitiruni le'nase. She first says, give me my ksuba, and then permit me to get married. Now what's the halacha? Meaning, as we know, like when in the list of ingredients, right, whatever you say first is the primary. My father actually won a court case once like that, where he said something he was able to prove when someone sued him for a job he once did, and he showed them how he listed his ad in the order of, and then that's primary, what you say first. So here she said, give me my ksuba first. Here, for sure, her intent was for the ksuba, because she said it, she's saying it first. And therefore, we're not going to let her get the ksuba and not even get remarried. She doesn't know what's going to be her. Meaning, so once she's ultimately mentioning marriage, she's revealing her intent is to get permitted to be able to remarry. She says first, maybe she thinks that that's the way that's going to permit her. She doesn't know what the main thing she knows. She hears about ksuba, you come to collect ksuba, this and that. So maybe she thinks that's the first one, and that's what she puts out first. But maybe her primary intent is to get remarried. So take a look. It's not clear what the halacha would be in these situations. What would be the woman's status? Now, continue to look at the next Mishnah. Continue on this theme regarding the husband dying, but now not so much about the woman herself, but regarding the other halacha that we said previously in this Masechta, that the Eid Echad is Neman for the woman to get remarried. Says the Mishnah, Kol Neman Lahi'ida. Everyone is believed to testify for this woman that her husband died, that she could go and get remarried. Chutz, there's 5 exceptions. Mechamoisa, these are all the spiteful women that you have to watch out for in your life. Chamoisa, mother-in-law. Uvas Chamoisa, the mother-in-law's daughter, the sister-in-law. Vitzarasa and her co-wife. The Yevimta, who's Yevimta? Meaning, it's her sister-in-law, meaning it's her husband's brother's wife, it's the wife of her Yevama. Because obviously, if one of their husbands would die without any children, they would suddenly become co-wives. So it's her husband's brother's wife.
Why would she want to say that he died? She doesn't want it.
What?
She doesn't want
Right.
it.
So Taisa asked that. It says, yeah, but because she's going to try to ruin it for her, because she's gonna go and marry someone else, and meaning, let's say if her husband, Taisa discusses if he does Yibam or not, depends which corner mandama, but she's gonna get ruined because she's gonna say her husband died without any children, and then she's gonna go ahead and marry someone else. because let's say her husband does chalitza and then she marries someone else, she's Eish Zif, so she's going to be Asla Baal Boil. So she wants to make it bad for her. And the fifth one is Ubas Baila, her stepdaughter, her husband's daughter. Now the reason for all these five women is because she hates her and she tries to ruin her life, because the mother-in-law hates her because she says to herself, she says, oh, everything I worked for my tzadikal, this woman comes along and she's going to take it all. Who she thinks she is, whatever. That's the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law's daughter, she says that, what do you mean? Everything my parents worked for, and I just get thrown to the side because the Yerusha goes to the son, and now this woman walks in here with the high heels, she takes whatever, so she hates her. And the sister-in-law, meaning the husband's brother's wife, she's afraid that maybe she can end up being her co-wife. She doesn't want to end up in that situation, so she tries to get her ruined. And her stepdaughter, her husband's daughter, she says, my mother, everything, and my mother passed away, and she comes along, and everything that my mother worked for all these years, she just walks in now, 40 years later, whatever, and she's gonna consume that all. So she hates her also. And the one of Tzara, Rashi doesn't have to tell us, that's obvious why the co-wife is a hated woman, because they're all competing and vying for the attention of the husband. So, says the Mishnah, now ma ben get lemisa. What's the difference between that of get and misa? What is the Mishnah asking? Because in the second paragraph of get in the Gimel Beis, the Mishnah tells us that even the women that are not trusted, like in our Mishnah to say that the husband died, they are trusted to bring her get from overseas, even though we're relying on them, because they have to say b'vananechtam. So why over there do we say in the sentence getting could that mother-in-law come says, oh, you know, your husband was overseas, he said he doesn't want you anymore, and he sent with me the get. If we're going to trust her and that the husband gave the get, how come we believe? It says the Mishnah, because there the writing is proving the primary thing we're relying on is really the document. We just need the mother-in-law to go ahead and prove that it was done l'shma or whatever, but really that's why it's different over there. And there we're going to rely on those five women.
So, by the way, she's made on herself too, because if the husband died, so she's falling the Yibum too.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see that some people might even ruin themselves because they hate her. You cut your nose to spite your face, just to get her. Yeah, we'll see how far, or maybe she'll just say, but she'll wait till the other one goes first. I mean, like the tzara, the co-wife is scheming over here, because even if she says the husband died, but she would rather ruin her life and get the other one also, because she deserves it or whatever, and I don't care about me, but See, by the way, the following question. So we said these five women. One of them was Bas Chamoisa, was her mother-in-law's daughter. What happens if it's Bas Chameha? What happens if it's her father-in-law's daughter? Meaning, not from the same woman. It's not her mother-in-law's daughter. Ma, what's the halacha? So what's the question? So the Gemara explains the question. Taima de Bas Chamoisa. What's the reason of the mother-in-law's daughter that she hates her? Is it Mishum de Ike Ima de Sanula? Is because her mother hates her? So hinami sanula, it's like generational, like it's because the mother's hatred, so the daughter's like mother like daughter. Now there's no mother that hates her because it's not the mother-in-law, it's only the father-in-law's daughter. No, so what's the reason why the daughter of the mother-in-law hates her? Because the Amr, she says, she consumes all the effort of the ima of my mother, which my mother brought into the marriage to my father from her father's household. So, hachanami here also, even though that this woman, this daughter-in-law, is not eating the toil of the mother, because it's her husband is not this woman's maternal brother. She's only his paternal brother. This sister-in-law, her father-in-law's daughter, not her mother-in-law's daughter. They're not maternal siblings, only paternal siblings. The halacha is, it's only the sons of the mother. They take what the mother brought into the marriage. As the Mishnah teaches in Ksubas and Beis and Beis, what says in Ksuba, "Benin dichrin di ahavin lechi minoi," that the male sons that you have from me, inun yirtun kesef ksubasayich. See, I'm able to read these words. Baruch Hashem, I got a cover to read a Ksuba just the other day, and these Aramaic words, everyone's listening. There's no nakudas there. But Baruch Hashem, see, we have all these words in Rashi. I knew it was familiar. That Inon Yirtin Kesik was about they can inherit the money of your Ksuba. Yes, Achul Koin Demachun, more than the portion that they have with their brothers. So in this case, he's not inheriting what the mother brought in, because it's the mother's son they get it. So he's not going to get what the mother brought in to the father. So it's not from the mother, but even so, but Karma, she's going to say, Achlal Girisna de Beinoshai, but he's eating at least what's in my father's household, and therefore she will hate him. So that's really a long way of just explaining that even though you don't have the case of Bas Chamoisa, which is she's eating what her mother brought in, when it's only his father-in-law's daughter, she's eating what her father had, not what her mother had. That's just a way. So basically, the question is, why does the mother-in-law's daughter hate this sister-in-law? Is it because her mother hates her? Because Chamoisa hates the daughter-in-law. So too will the daughter hate her because her mother hates her, or is it no, because she's going to consume what my mother brought into the marriage, and here also she's going to consume what my father has, and that because the son takes it and she gets pushed to the side. So Gemara says Tashma not being arrived from the Mishnah. Mishnah said Hakol Namanim Laha'ida. Everyone's believed to testify that this woman's husband died, Chutz Mechamish Nashim, except for 5 women. Says the Gemara, the Misa, that if it would be true that Bas Chameha would hate her, so Shisabin, that would be 6, not 5. Obviously, the reason is because like mother, like daughter, and not because you consuming what my father had, because then you would have had a 6th one. Says the Gemara, no, it's not a riot. Why? Because Dilma Tam the Bas Chamaisa, maybe the reason of the daughter of the mother-in-law is the Amr Ka'achal Ligirisna the Binashai, that actually she's eating what was worked on by my family. So Loishna Bas Chamaisa, so it's no difference if it's the mother-in-law's daughter. Loishna Bas Chamaisa, there's no difference if it's the father-in-law's daughter. It's not just that she's eating what my mother brought in, it's what my parents, what my family, and therefore we didn't have to say both cases of Chamoisa and Chamel, it's the same thing, so it's not right. Could be Chamel also would hate her. So the Gemara says, and Taisa says it's asking on the Mishnah, which although it sounds like it's continuing what we just saying, Taisa says like the Mishnah only said 5 cases, and the Ger says actually Vahad Tanya. But you're telling me that Mishnah says 5 cases, but we're learning the Brisa says Chutz Mi Sheva Nashim, except for 7 women. So how could you tell me that there's 5/6? Says Gemara here Rabbi Hudi. That's not a difficulty. So again, the Gemara, according to what our gear says, we didn't really answer the question. There's no proof regarding Bas Chameha. Could have been either way. But the Gemara says Ayat says the Brisa 7. That's Rabbi Huda, and the gear says the Tanya. Like learn the Brisa. Yehuda Ma'asav, he adds on another 2 women that hate this woman. You have Eaf Eishes Av. You have the stepmom, which is the father's wife, Bakala, and the Shniya and the daughter-in-law. They wouldn't be able to testify for the mother-in-law, that because she hates her mother-in-law too. So Amalei said to Yehuda, but you don't have to say these 2 women. Eishes Av, the father's wife, the stepmother, Harebachla Basaba. She's included in one of the 5 women of the stepdaughter. Why? Because since the stepdaughter cannot testify for the stepmom, that's one of the 5 you already mentioned, by default you're already excluding also that the stepmom cannot testify for her husband's daughter, for the stepdaughter. It's reciprocal. So therefore you're not really adding on anything. You don't have to mention it independently. And so to Kala, you don't have to mention the daughter-in-law, because that's included in the mother-in-law. Meaning, just like you said, the mother-in-law cannot testify for the daughter-in-law because she hates her. The daughter-in-law, hates her too. So that's included in that reciprocal relationship. But Rabbi Huda, he would tell you, no, most definitely you have to mention it. Why? Because I understand why the mother-in-law, that Sanyala Likala, she hates the daughter-in-law, because she's going to end up inheriting her. The Amr, she says to herself, she's consuming all my hard work, all these years I'm working and schwitzing, and guess what? This girl just walks in and takes it all. So she hates her. My time is Sanyala Chamaisa. But why does the daughter-in-law hate the mother-in-law? But I mean, the shviga does everything. She brought her this husband. Why would she hate her? So therefore, you have to mention the daughter-in-law too. And same thing is regarding Bishlam Basabal. I understand regarding this stepdaughter that she cannot testify because the sign she hates her stepmother. Why? Because the Amr Ka'achal Gurasani De'im. She says, my mother for all these years, my tired mama, she worked so hard, she schwitzt, she built this house, and then this woman just walks right in and she uses everything and she can have everything, and therefore she hates her. But the tzika kimena, but the stepmother, my time is about. Why would she hate her stepdaughter? This is like, free. She just comes in, she gets a family, everything. Why would she hate her stepdaughter? So therefore you have to mention that case too. So the Gemara asks and says, wait a second. Elamai moisef. So what's this that you're adding on these two cases? In other words, since you tell me that there's no reason for the daughter-in-law to hate her mother-in-law, so why is Yehuda adding on and saying, you're right, that she's not believed? Why is she not believed? Well, she shouldn't hate her. And he says that Ella rather must be that the reason of Yehuda is not like the Chacham that it's reciprocal. Rather, you're right, it's for different reasons. And therefore you have to mention it. So why does the daughter-in-law hate the mother-in-law? It's for a different reason. It's because the Megala Labana called the Avda. Because she tells her son everything that she's doing. She says, I just want you to know, I don't want to say Ruchi, and I'm saying she came, she didn't, she shouldn't clean up, she didn't do this and that. The mother-in-law is always telling her son, he said, I don't want to meddle, but, it's like, right, And so therefore she hates her mother-in-law because the mother-in-law is always saying things about her. So you're right, for a very different reason. And Ishazab Nami San Labasabal, why does the stepmom hate the stepdaughter? Is for a different reason, not because consuming, because the stepdaughter is not consuming anything, she didn't earn anything, she just walks right into the marriage. Is the Megal Lavia called the Avda, similar type of reasoning. Because the stepdaughter is always mentioning to the father everything that, your wife, I don't want to say anything, but she's like this and she's like that. By the way, she's mixing up all the kalim and everything, whatever does that like. So because of that she tells her, therefore she hates her. So again, that's why he added on these two more. However, V'Rabbanan, the reason why they didn't feel it was necessary to mention Kala and Ba'eshas Av independently, and they held it was already included in the case of Chamoisa and Basabal, was because of a famous pasuk in Mishlei. Pasuk says, Kamayim, like water that a person looks into and he sees in it, Hapanim lapanim, the face is like to the face, meaning the face, the reflection he sees in the water is the same as his face. And that is, if he's smiling, the face is smiling back at him. If his face is crooked, the face is crooked back at him. Says the pasuk in Mishlei, came leva adam la adam. So too is the heart of man to another person. And that is, if he loves this person, he's going to love him. If he hates him, he's going to hate him. So therefore you don't have to add it on. Because it's from the original reasoning that we know that they're not believed. Because since the mother-in-law, the shviga, hates, the shnia hates the daughter-in-law, because she's consuming all the hard work. I brought up my son and we were so close, and now she comes in and she's spending all the time, I don't have no more attention. So therefore the daughter-in-law hates the mother-in-law, because she hates her. And therefore it's reflecting back that same hatred. And since the stepdaughter hates the mother-in-law, because the stepmother, because she's consuming all that her mother had done. So to the stepmother hates the stepdaughter, because again, it's just reflecting back, and therefore the one who's in that position, the shviga, will put all the work on you. You're the one who's going to create the energy according to the Rabbanan, that it's because of how you look at your daughter-in-law, that's how she's going to reflect back. And if you have that love, then it's going to be reciprocal too. But you don't have to mention independently, because we know that there's some type of a enmity between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, so it's going to be automatic. But he would tell you, what does he do with this? Why does he have to add on the case of the Kala and the Eshes Ha'av? Isn't it automatic? Isn't Kamayim upon him? He says, no, that's not what the pasuk means. The famous idea of this pasuk according to Yehuda is not true. It doesn't hold necessarily that it's reflective. You could have someone hating someone and the person not going to hate back. This pasuk is actually referring to the words of Torah, which Rashi brings two interpretations. Either it means to say, according to the face and the heart that you give for Torah, that's how your heart is going to stand for you, that you should be able to understand your learning, which, like paraphrasing the famous Gemara Megillah, that if you toil in Torah, you're going to find results. If you don't toil, you're not going to find. So that means Kamayim upon Adam, which means to say that how much hearts you give for Torah, that's how much the Torah is going to give back to you. Another interpretation is if his teacher is Mazbelei upon him, which if he explains it to him with a shmeichel or with a geschmack, and he explains him, then he's going to become smart. But if not, he's not going to be able to understand from his Rebbe. That's what it means. Kamayim upon him came label Adam, how much his Rebbe gives to him with that openness, and that's how the students can receive it. That's what it means, but it has nothing to do with the interpersonal relationships to say that it's going to be automatic hatred. Now, related to this, the Gemara says an interesting case. And they asked the following interesting question. What does that mean? A mother-in-law that's gonna ultimately come. Meaning, it's the mother of the Yavam, but not the mother of her husband. Meaning, her husband's brother is his paternal brother. They have the same father, but they don't have the same mother. So, there's a potential mother-in-law here. Let's see how far the mother-in-law relationship is. Meaning, maybe she's going to be her mother-in-law. If her husband dies without any children, then the brother is going to become her husband. That makes his mother her shviger, potentially. So now, what's the halacha? Do we say that woman is believed to say that your husband died, and therefore do yibum with my son, or he'll do chalitza to you and you can marry someone else? What's ultimately the question? So the Gemara says, Mi maska. Does this mother of the Yavam entertain a daita in her thought process that maybe the mizbal, maybe her husband's going to die, v'nafli kame Yavam, and then she's going to fall for yibum to her son, and then this woman's going to eat up everything I worked hard for, and therefore she's intending to ruin her now. They say good defense is a good offense, is that she will not fall for yibum to her son, because she'll ruin her. She'll make her asa to her husband, and this and that. She'll have to be with shanda, and she'll have to move out wherever, this and that. And because V'sanyala, she hates her. Or not. That's the question the Gemara. Now Rashi points out, although regarding Sarah Habalach Mekem, which is a future co-wife, that was obvious to us, as we said in the Mishnah, of the Yevimta. What was the case of the Yevimta? That was because of actually she's going to be a future co-wife. That's what Yevimta means. I mean, say it's her husband's brother's wife, and we said that she hates her because she's afraid that she's going to ultimately be her co-wife. So isn't that the same thing we're saying over here, that ultimately she's going to be her mother-in-law? Says Rashi, no. There it's what's called Sarah de Gufa. That is, a very difficult relationship that you're in because you're constantly with this co-wife. And therefore there she's entertaining that. She definitely has more panic and anxiety for that. But the hatred of the mother-in-law to the daughter-in-law, that's for a monetary reason. So maybe that she's not entertaining so much to worry that maybe she's going to go ahead and get married to my son through Yibum. So that's the question. Is she afraid of that so much? Is she entertaining that she'll try to ruin her or not? So as we continue, Medvei says the Gemara touched on our finger raya from the Mishnah on the next daf. Mishnah says, Amra, if a woman says, she comes back from overseas and she says, look, I was with my shver and my husband, and meis balevachkach meis cham. It was a terrible accident. My husband died, and then afterwards my father-in-law died. So the halacha is tinasa b'tila ksuba. So we said she's believed to say her husband died, she could get remarried and she could take a ksuba. But the chamais asura, her mother-in-law is forbidden to get remarried, which, as Rashi tells us, there's a chiddush over here, meaning even though she first said, my husband died. So technically, it turns out, the moment she says her husband died, this woman's not her shviger anymore, because she's not her husband's mother. So she's like an unrelated woman. Even so, the Mishnah is saying that she's not believed on what she says my father-in-law died, and therefore her mother-in-law is still going to be forbidden to remarry. Says the Gemara, my time asura. What's the reason why the mother-in-law is forbidden? What do you mean? She's not her mother-in-law. She's not her shviger anymore. So why is she forbidden? La Mishum is because we say the truth is loy balamais. Actually, her husband didn't die, and therefore this woman's still her mother-in-law, and therefore so to b'lechamemas, and therefore the whole story was goodbye. And also her mother-in-law, her father-in-law didn't die. So why is the daughter-in-law saying this? She's intending to she wants to ruin her mother-in-law because Sabr, she's thinking, why is she trying to ruin for her mother-in-law? She's thinking like this. Labasa shaita, like Teise, isn't my husband going to come back in a few weeks, in a few months, and to Tzaran, and then my mother-in-law is going to start bothering me again? Meaning, as Rashi explains, even though now the shviger's son, her husband, is overseas, so the mother is not by her son to tell him everything wrong the daughter-in-law is doing. Even so, the daughter-in-law is entertaining to ruin her mother-in-law now because of what's going to happen in 6 months from now when my husband's going to come back and her husband's going to come back. She's going to go back to her old ways about embarrassing me. So therefore, she's thinking now about how she could ruin her mother-in-law now. Oh, so says Rashi, that's what the Gemara is trying to prove. The same thing is regarding Chamoisa B'Alach Mekain, because that's also an Acher Mekain. Just like here, the daughter-in-law is plotting and scheming against her mother-in-law for a problem which is not even right now, because the husband's not around. She only goes to her husband and says, "Oh, I want you to know," but the husband's not around. So she's not bothering her right now. But she knows that's going to happen, and therefore she's thinking about it right now. So therefore, that would be the same thing with the mother-in-law. Although she's not a mother-in-law now, but she's thinking ahead of what's going to happen in a year from now, and this and that, and they don't have children yet, and what's going to happen, and she's going to fall for my son. She wants to ruin her now already. So you want to know, Dimashani Hasan, maybe there it's different. The case that we quoted from the Mishnah later on, because she already, this daughter-in-law already experienced the trauma of her mother-in-law bothering her and taunting her. So this is what's called an old hatred. So she has PTSD from her already. She's already a past experience of this relationship. So therefore that's something that she's living with at all times. But regarding the mother-in-law, which is for something that she was never her mother-in-law, but she might be a mother-in-law, that's not a raya that's necessarily the case. So he says other differences that it could have said, but ultimately there's differences between this case and never wouldn't be a raya. We didn't answer that question regarding if a potential future mother-in-law hates a daughter-in-law so much that she would lie already now to ruin her that she doesn't end up being her shviga. That's how weit the Talmudic literature is on the shviga. Halach in the next Mishnah, again continuing this theme regarding someone else testifying, an Eid Echad testifying regarding this woman that her husband died. It says the Mishnah, Eid am a mess. What happens if we have contradictory testimonies? One witness says, I was there in Berlin with him, and he died. And Vinicius, so she gets remarried, because I get remarried based on testimony Eid Echad. Then Bo Echad Ba'amalei Meis, another person comes along and says, he's not dead. He's alive. He's alive and kicking. I saw him in Bermuda. So the Mishnah says, she doesn't leave the new husband that she married because of the fact that she was allowed to get married based on that Eid Echad, as we'll see in the Gemara. Now, Eid I'm a let's say one witness says that he died. Then two witnesses come along and say that he's not dead. Oh, says the Mishnah, that even though she got remarried, the halacha is Teitei, she has to leave that marriage because two witnesses, I believe, in regards to one who ate. What happened if Shnaim Oimim Meis? What happened if two people say he died, and one witness says he didn't die? And then even if he didn't get married, she didn't get married, then to us she can get married because again we believe that of the two witnesses that he's dead. The Gemara makes a deal. Time of Denissus. The opening halacha of the ratio, you told me that if one witness has said that he died, and she got married, and then one witness comes along and says she didn't die, then she doesn't leave the marriage, sounds like because she got married. Holiness is if she didn't get married yet. Like Tinase, then since we have a contradictory testimony of one against one, she shouldn't get married. Says the Gemara, Ula said the following teaching. Wherever the Torah believed one witness, and the question is it the Devar Torah or is it the rabbinic law? But either way, that Ula seems to be saying that anytime we believe one witness, it's considered as if it's two witnesses. So we don't believe the testimony of one against two. So why are you telling me that if she didn't get married yet, the deek of the Mishnah would be that she cannot get married now? It's only if she got married, we don't have to leave. What do you mean? But that one is like two. And then that following one who says he's not dead is like one. So we don't believe one against two. So why are you telling me she cannot get married? You're saying that first witness is like two. So who cares if another one comes along and says that he didn't die? I don't listen to one against two. So says the Gemara, no, right. What? Why is the second one not considered like? Well, first of all, that's not in the manas that we ever gave that not dead. Meaning we only said if someone says that he's dead, we believe you to allow the woman to get remarried. So we're giving you that nemanis, and therefore you're like two. And the Gemara really answers I think what you're trying to ask is hachakam. The Gemara says you're right. If Eid Echad Omer Meis, if one witness says that he died, v'hitiruli nase, as Taisa develops this idea, meaning, And Rashi also says, and they permitted her to get remarried. They already was the heter from the Bezdin, they already passed it. And one man has come along and said that he didn't die. When we say leiteitzim, it doesn't mean she doesn't leave the marriage. Even if she didn't get married, she could get married. But like Rashi points out, specifically if they really permitted her before the second witness comes along who's trying to refute that. But you're right, if he came before we were mater, Ula would agree that we don't rely on the first one because you're not considered like two yet. You're like a regular person, one and one. So why should we believe you more than the other one? You're both one. But if already went to court, and the courts already went through the process, and he says, okay, you should get remarried, that's like two. So if someone subsequently comes, you're not like two, you're Eid Echad. There's no, a regular Eid Echad says he's not dead, is not believed like two. For this heter of Iguna, we made you like two. So therefore it's like two against one, and therefore you would be allowed to get married. It's not even like Teitze from the Nesuin, it's like Teitze Meter Rishon.
Isn't the testimony that he's alive stronger? Is there more than one than that person is dead? Because that could only be verified if they actually saw the dead body. If they just know because they're in the town that the person is known to be dead.
No, they're saying we
saw the dead
body.
body.
They're saying we saw him dead, and they're saying we saw him alive. Whatever that, yeah.
But it's two Eidim with the come and say.
Right, that's the Mishnah. Mishnah said that if two witnesses come along and they say, yeah, that's going to refute, because even though we consider one as two, it's not as strong as actual two. Now the Mishnah said one of the next case was Eid Omer Mace. If one witness says that he died, which is really the case you were just discussing, and then two witnesses come along and say no, that he didn't die, so then we said then you have to leave. So the Gemara actually says it's so pshita, it's obvious. Of course, even Ulu would agree over there, because the in verb shalecha makom shnayim. What does that mean? You tell me that one is like two? No, like Rashi explains. In regards to two, that one is like one, because even though we consider like two, but not regarding two eidim, which is the biblical category, and therefore he's going to be bottle, and we don't say trey b'trey ninu. So that's so obvious. Why does the Mishnah have to tell us? So the Gemara says, no, the Gemara says this actually refers to something a little bit more complex. Actually refers to tzricha b'psuli edis. It's actually talking about regarding invalid witnesses. Meaning, even though that the two who are saying that he did not die are women who are psuli edis, still that first witness who said that he died is mibatal to what they're saying. And that was necessary to say. Because like Nechem says, because the time in the Brayser, Nechem he says, wherever the Torah believes one witness, like we are saying over here regarding the husband's death. So that must mean by default that we don't have your regular halachas of edus, because just like one witness is considered significant, so then even invalid witnesses are going to be considered significant. So therefore, what's the criterion? So halachah charev days, you go after the majority of the opinions. And if you don't check to see if they're kosher edim or pas edim, we're already in the new category, we don't care. So therefore, they made two women opposing that of one man, of his testimony, where they're refuting that eid echad, even if he's a man, and they say he didn't die, is there's like two men against one man, where the first eid is going to be bottled. Even if she got married, she'd have to leave that marriage. So that's the chiddush, that's a big chiddush, because say two women who are saying he didn't die are believed over that one aid. At least he's a man, he's a kosher witness, but he's Eid Echad. No, we're going to say that the two women are going to be believed, and that's the chiddush of the halacha, even though the psuli aid. That's one version. There's another version that's a little bit scaled down. No, it's not true. Wherever you have originally one kosher aid, meaning a man, and they permitted the woman to get remarried based on what he's saying, then actually even if 100 women come along and say that he's not dead, it's ke'eid echadami. 100 women is like one kosher aid. So therefore, just like one aid would be bottled in regards to the first aid, because we say the first one's like two, and therefore the words of the second single aid is nothing in place of the first one who's like two, 100 women are also bottled to that first man who says that the husband died. And you're right, in such a situation, the Mishnah would not say she would have to leave that heter. Ella, rather, the Mishnah that says that even though she got married, she's going to have to leave, is going to say isha mekava, specifically only if the first one who said that the husband died was a woman, and they let her get remarried based on the woman's testimony. That's the Mishnah saying that she would have to leave based on two women who come after that and say that he's not dead. So you can't say that the first one was an 8 kosher, because even though you're going to say that that first woman is like two to permit her to get married based on what she's saying, but since the two women come after that, that's what we're saying. That's the chiddush that they're going to say that we're going to believe them that he's not dead. And if you have to then explain the words of Nehemiah as follows. In Nehemiah, he says, wherever would the Torah believe one witness, like in the case of a husband dying, you go after the majority of opinions, and that is and the gears here is they made two women against one woman, like two men against one man. But actually two women against one man, that actually would be kapalga, that would be like 50-50, which as Rashi explains, meaning like when you have one aide who says that the husband died, and then you permit the woman to get remarried based on that. Another one comes along and says he didn't die, which we said in the Mishnah that she does not leave from her first heter, which is like, it is like half and half, but ultimately that first half is stronger than the second half, and then actually you would not believe the two women against, even 100 women against that first man. It's only if the first one was a woman. Then the two women, that's the case of the Mishnah that we're saying that's a chiddush of halacha charibdei is because we go with psuli edis. The Mishnah then continued and said, let's say two witnesses says that the husband did die, etc., and one witness says that he didn't die. So he says, that you could even go ahead now, even if she didn't get married, she could get married. Says what's it teaching us? If you're going to say it's teaching us psuli edis, that even if these two people that said that the husband died are psuli edis, so it's like a Nechemia, the Azal Basar Rebbeis that goes up the majority of opinions. Well, that's the same thing we just said before. What are we adding on from this case? We already spoke about this principle of Nechemia in our Mishnah as we just explained. So what would you say in the Basar Rebbeis when you go up to the majority of opinions is l'chumra, is stringently, because what was the previous case in the Mishnah, the middle case? That was where you say that the two witnesses are going to require her to leave. That's a stringency. But maybe as a leniency, we wouldn't say go after Rebbeis. So the Mishnah is teaching that even if it's a leniency, the two who are saying that he did die, in contrast to the one who said he didn't die, are going to believe because they go after Rebbeis even as a leniency. Now, I love the next Mishnah. Mishnah continues with the same theme. If you have two co-wives who are coming back from overseas, they went with a trip with their husband, the husband with his two wives, and they come back. And Achas Emer is mace. So one of them says, my husband died. The Achas, the other co-wife says, Omer, she says, Lo mace, he didn't die. So you have this machlekes tzores, what happened to their husband? Is he dead or not? So says the Mishnah, Zusha Emer is mace, the one that says that he died. So Tinasa B'tidik Subas. So she's allowed to get remarried and take her ksuba. We said in the previous Mishnah, as a woman's believed to say, my husband died. Zusha Emer is Lo mace, the one that says he didn't die. Okay, Lo Tinasa B'tidik Subasa. She's not get married, she's not take her ksuba. What happens if, let's say, Achas Emer is mes? Let's say one says that he had a heart attack. He was in his bed, he was in the jacuzzi, and he had a heart attack and he died. But Achas Emer says, no, actually, we were taking a walk there in maybe the seedier parts of town, and he got held up at gunpoint, and there he was killed. He was shot. What's the halacha over there? So Meir says, look, since they're contradicting each other, very different stories. So they're not allowed to get remarried. So the Gemara is going to ask, why doesn't Rameh disagree on the Reisha, which when one said he died and one said he didn't die, then even the one that said that he died should not be able to get remarried because they're having contradictory stories. Why is it any different in the case of the Sefer? So the Gemara is going to address that. Rameh says none of them could get married because they're contradicting each other. They say no. Since ultimately both of them are agreeing that he was in the morgue, that he's not alive anymore, say nasu, they're allowed to go ahead and get married, which, however, Rashi says, but if one of them would agree and one of them would not agree, so then they both would not be able to get remarried, only the one who would agree. But here where ultimately they both agree that he's not alive, they can get married. It says the Mishnah, what happens if Edom and Mace? What happens similarly, like we did the transition, the previous Mishnah is regarding the women themselves and then regarding Edom, this Mishnah we do that too. What happens if Edom and Mace? One witness says that he died. One witness says he didn't die. Or, as we continue of Kofi Chazman Aleph, Isha Meres Mace. One woman says he died. Isha Meres Lemes. One woman says he didn't die. Allah is Harezalei Tinasa. So then the woman cannot get remarried based on the contradictory testimony. Now, since the second one came before the first one already permitted her, so that's like we said just before in the Gemara, then that's one against one, and she has no heter to get remarried. Now, even if the second woman that's testifying is her co-wife, would make her forbidden, and the Gemara is going to explain that this anonymous part of the Mishnah must be going like Rameir, who says that the co-wife could also refute her, and therefore not allow her to get remarried. As we said, if one says that he died and one says he was narrowed, says okay, then you're being refuted by your co-wife, and that would not let you get remarried. That's the case. You have Isha Meves Meis, Isha Meves Le Meis, as Taisa develops the proof. How do we know that's referring even to the co-wives? But that would be even co-wives, and therefore you see that the co-wife could refute. That must be like Rameir, as the Gemara is going to prove that. I think it's any time.